The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
In the past few years, we've heard the term free agents and been told we would all need to become one in order to succeed. The recent economic structures have helped to promote this concept as reality. Where do we get the tools to take control of our career path in the present and future? Welcome to the Career Confidante with your host, Marie Zimenoff. Marie and her guest experts are here to provide you with the tools you need to move forward and achieve your career goals. Now, here is Marie Zimenoff.
Welcome to the Career Confidante. We're so glad that you've joined us today. If you were listening into the show last week, you know that you're in for a special treat. This is your host for the Career Confidante, Marie Zimenoff, and you know that this show is here to help you moving forward in your career in today's non-ladderless career world, right? You've got to decide it for yourself, be in charge of it for yourself, and we're here to give you the tools to be able to do that. Very interesting, a totally different idea around that topic. Today we're going to be talking about franchising, and I had the benefit of meeting Stephen Hogan, who's joining us today on the show, and Stephen brings an interesting background to this world. So he's been in the franchising business for a long time, and he's been through all different aspects of it. He's been an owner of a franchise, he's been an investor, he's been an operator, and now he helps other individuals figure out if they want to be in franchising and what type of franchise would be the best fit for them. So a very different type of approach when you're thinking about your career and what might be the best way for you to move forward in your career. Maybe you've never thought about franchising, but Stephen's here today to tell us about that. So Stephen, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Marie. It's really an honor.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you here and to be able to share your wisdom with the group, and we know that they're all going to get great value from hearing what you have to say. So share with me, what your group does is help people figure out if a franchise is right for them. So tell me a little bit about what tools or education does someone need to become a franchisee or a franchisor or whatever the right word is. Tell me what the right word is and then tell me what that is.
Well, we use the term Z's and Zors. A franchisee would be somebody who wants to become part of the organization, and then the organization or the mothership, as I call it, would be the franchisor. So the approach that we take is a little bit of a reverse engineering. It's kind of what do you want to be when you grow up? And we ask people, Marie, to define what their life should look like if they had the perfect business or career, and then we work backwards from that. So we ask them to find out what their budget is, how much money they want to make, what their risk tolerance is, how their family would fit into this quality of life, whether passion and conviction is a big factor. And then we do a very extensive interview, what we call a profile, and it's based on 30 characteristics. And after we do this elaborate evaluation, it becomes kind of like eHarmony for franchising. Now that we know who you are and what you're made of, then we go up to our inventory of 100 pre-selected franchises that we very much vetted. And out of that 100, I try and come up with 3 that would meet that person's aspirations, their personality, their risk tolerance, and their budget. And then the fun begins, and we get to investigate and become learners and students about franchising. And I work with them as kind of their coach. And the good news is it's not a sales process. It's a free service. So the only intent is to find out what's best for that individual. And people in career transition, sometimes just eliminating that being an entrepreneur or a franchise isn't for them is a huge benefit. And if it is, then they decide whether they want to go solo on their own or whether the franchise would be the right fit for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and you and I talked briefly, and I said, especially in 2008 or 2009, I saw a bunch of job seekers getting talked into becoming financial advisors and some of those things that were quite devastating just because it was not a good fit for them, and the organization wasn't helping them really figure that out. They just wanted them to get a few clients, and if they didn't make it, I'm sure they wouldn't have said that, but it really didn't matter, right? Because now that organization got those assets. And so I like what you're talking about because it is much more of is it a good fit for you process.
Well, and Marie, there's 3,500 franchises. And in my 28 years, there are a lot of them, if you can fog a mirror and walk upright and write a check, they'll try and emotionally sell you a deal. That's why we work with this group of 100, and they have the attitude of awarding franchises, not selling. So it's going to feel much more like an executive interview where they're trying to make sure that the person's the right fit for them as much as the individual trying to make sure that the culture and the brand and the return on investment is a good fit for them also.
Yeah. Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about these 30 characteristics. What have you found is important in people's personalities in terms of being a franchise owner or not? If someone's sitting at home and they're thinking about it, is there a few key things you could say to them that might steer them in one direction or another?
If I could make an analogy, I look at people when I think about whether they should be employed, how they should be employed. I call it Clydesdales, Thoroughbreds, and Mustangs. The Clydesdale personality that's a wonderful horse, very powerful, loves to get hooked up to the wagon, go back and forth between the barn and the farm. These are people that should keep a job. They're looking for security. They're very low risk. They want to show up and get paid. Then we have the Mustang, the person that's high-level entrepreneurial spirit, maybe more people that you might be dealing with, that doesn't want to follow the rules. They want to create their own vision. And the Thoroughbred, and that's the franchisee personality, they like structure. They like to cooperate, just like the Thoroughbred wants a jockey. Their only goal is to win and to execute. So people that are project managers, people that have military background, people who have this balance between solving problems and being innovative, but their whole focus is on execution before innovation. So right there is a key about somebody that's a franchisee. Somebody with a military background, they know that when they go into the battle, they have a plan, they have to follow structure, and then all chaos breaks loose and they have to figure things out. That's a great quality of a franchisee. Systems and innovation, implement first, innovate second. So that's number one characteristic. Do you want me to go on, or did you have a comment on that?
Oh, no, that's very interesting because I would... that's just very good for people to know about themselves, right? I'm definitely the Mustang. I love to innovate. I dealt with structure maybe too much in my university life, and so the idea of someone else telling me how to run the business doesn't really work that well for me. But I work with a lot of people who that structure is very good for, and they do want to innovate, but they can execute and, like you said, win before they have to do that, whereas I would probably get bored. I want to do the innovation first.
And, there's another characteristic. These are a little more esoteric. It's passion versus conviction. I've had people come to me say, gee, when I grew up, my grandpa made donuts, and I really love the smell of donuts, and I've got to own a bakery. They have to have a passion and a love for the business. And then I meet people, like I helped an individual get into a dumpster franchise, and he didn't wake up and say, gee, I love to look at dumpsters and watch seagulls fly around the landfill. But he had a conviction about running a great business that was scalable, that had tangible assets, and had one of the most important things, I think, of success, repeat business that people needed it rather than what people wanted. So that's another characteristic of franchisees. They have a conviction about business, but they're not necessarily in love with the fact that they own a plumbing business or a painting business or dog washing or yoga or educating kids. It's the business that they have their passion about. Does that make sense?
It does, and I like that it could be either or, right? Like your guy that had the donut shop, he could be successful. But I would talk to a lot of people that say, well, my passion is X or Y, and I don't want to do that for work, or maybe I don't have a passion. And honestly, Stephen, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Not everybody has some overt passion that they could tell you right off their head what it is. And so if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking about that, I love Stephen's word of conviction. And if you have a conviction to an ideal or to a type of business or to a certain type of how you decide success looks, all of those things can be just as motivating for success versus a passion.
Then you asked me about these characteristics. Some people go into this too, Marie, because they want to buy a job. And that's not a bad deal. They're an owner-operator. They tend to be a hands-on individual. They tend to be a little more task-oriented. But they want something that they can build, they can direct, and it's more of a lifestyle business. Then we see people who want to own a business and they want to manage managers. Whatever the product is, they're familiar with the product or the service. They do that for 6 months, but they really don't want to be in the trenches. They want their people running the business. And those are the people that would have maybe 1 or 2 locations or 1 or 2 territories. And that's probably the vast majority. In an area that most people aren't aware of is one thing we call an empire builder or an area developer. This would be somebody who's been an investor, a C-level type individual, and they want to build a large region, and the franchisors then would award them maybe all of Colorado, and their goal would be to open up maybe 25 offices. So they almost work as the local branch of the franchise. And the cool thing about that investment is there's a residual. They receive part of the franchise fee. They've received part of the royalty, and so they build a large organization, and these are kind of your visionaries that end up owning maybe 25 Great Clips or 10 Pro Martial Arts. And so that's kind of the 3 levels of franchising: owner-operator, individual that's kind of the CEO of his area, and then what I call the empire builder.
Yeah, and you probably know Jay Favell here in Fort Collins. He owns a lot of the Pizza Huts and has bought some pizza, or not Pizza Huts. Oh, he'd kill me. Domino's.
Yeah.
And he was a good example of that empire builder. He's got many stores. He's a well-known leader within the Domino's franchise and well-known for developing his people and developing his stores. And that's definitely an opportunity for people, as you said, that have that capital and that kind of CEO level vision, leadership ability. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back here talking with Stephen more about franchising and how you could become a franchisee. We'll be right back in just a few minutes.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit GetCareerSmart.com to find out more. That's GetCareerSmart.com. franchisee.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation. Does your organization lack proper leadership? We're not necessarily talking about experience, but about how to face the changing dynamic of leadership today. Sometimes the people we lead know more. Old ways don't work anymore, and the comfort zone just becomes too easy. Listen for Out of the Comfort Zone with Dr. Wanda Wallace. We'll show you how you can adapt and develop your leadership skills to today's workplace every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on Voice America Business. Bob Pritchard has over 30 years of experience as a straight-talking business consultant and author working with some of the top Fortune 500 companies. Now he's come to the Voice America Business Channel to help you and your business. Tune in to the Bob Pritchard Radio Show for information about starting and successfully running a profitable business. From the movers and shakers to great marketing screw-ups, you can't afford to miss a single edition of the Bob Pritchard Radio Show. Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on Voice America Business.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
You are tuned in to The Career Confidante with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@astrategicadvantage.com. Now, back to The Career Confidante.
Welcome back to the Career Confidant, and today we are talking with Stephen Hogan from FranNet, and he's been sharing some of the key things to think about if you are interested in becoming a franchisee. First, he educated us on what franchisee means, and that means you're buying into the franchise, and then we talked a little bit about the different types of people, and the most successful one at franchising being those that he shared are like thoroughbreds. They like the structure, they want to execute, solve problems, and innovate where needed, but really like that idea of taking a business and making it their job, and or taking a franchise and becoming a leader within it, either regionally or in the area. And so, Stephen, as you're talking, I get that it could be bigger, but a franchise really is just owning a local business. Is that right?
You know, that's a really important point. I think people view franchising as burgers, fries, and $1 million. And really, it's local entrepreneurs that just want to take somebody else's proven method, model, marketing, and operations, and execute it. And so they are local entrepreneurs. Imagine if you drove down the main street of Loveland or Fort Collins or Longmont, you'd probably pass 30 or 40 franchises and just not recognize it because they aren't always food. There are all kinds of different things that are that people operate, Marie.
Okay. And since you brought it up here, can you give me a range of the investment that someone would have to make to get into any of those types of franchises? What's the down payment, or however you say it?
Well, it kind of breaks into 4 categories. This might help everybody. If you're looking for simple retail where you've got a building, you're probably looking at $150,000 to $300,000. If you're looking at retail like a Batteries Plus that has inventory, or a Menchie's, or anything with food, you're probably looking at $250,000 to $500,000. So the retail with the location is a bigger investment. Now, the service-based businesses, very affordable. A business-to-consumer service-based business might be $75,000 to $125,000 all in. And then a business that's service-based mobile with what we call Chuck in a truck or a man in a van, where it serves businesses, is a little bit more expensive, probably $100,000 to $200,000. Our records show the average that people invest in a franchise across all the boards about $151,000 total all in. And typically of that, 30 to 40% is cash, and 60 to 70% is borrowed through various funding vehicles that people can take access to. So it's not an all-cash deal.
Okay, good. So let's talk about, you said some of the things essential for success. What are some of the reasons that people fail at franchising?
That's my, I was the director of operations and training for 15 years. I trained 850 people that ran about 400 franchises, and then me and my team went out and supported them. I think there's 3 or 4 characteristics consistent with people that don't fail. The first one's really funny. Everybody who gets into franchising swears up and down they will follow the system to the T. Guess what everybody did for the first 6 to 9 months when they bought a franchise? They will not follow the system to a T. They make slight, imperceptible variations and changes in the business plan, and ultimately that harms them. So if you buy a franchise, you need to be committed to believing in the system and then following it. The second is really critical, is marketing and being able to have clients acquisition. So if the franchise requires that you do direct mail, you need to do that advertising and have an appropriate budget and a commitment to your marketing. And the marketing is like growing grass from seed. You plant it, you fertilize it, and you water, and you go out the next day and there's no grass. And you water and water and water, and it takes weeks of watering for the grass to sprout. In running any business, in franchising, you have to be committed to your sales and marketing for a long period of time. And that goes to the third point, is having sufficient capital to carry you until the business gets to cash flow and to break even. So if the franchisor tells you it takes 12 months and you only have 9 months of capital, you should not get into that business. You should always have that capital plus some reserves. And then the third part is the intangible, is the ability to deal with the unknown. I've seen this over and over again, is people let fear and the unknown scare them, and they stop because they become fearful. So I would say those are the 4 reasons why people fail at franchising.
Interesting. And so that, I love the marketing one because I talk to people about that all the time. They're like, well, what did that, specific marketing thing do, or what did that specific marketing thing do? And although I agree we should track and know some numbers, with this marketing, you really can't always say this came from that, this came from that. And you have to be willing to spend some money to make some money, right?
Well, and this is where we do this evaluation and matching. If somebody's an engineer or an accountant or an IT guy, they should never get into a business that requires that they go out and walk into businesses and make pitches and be comfortable. I don't want to call doing informational visits. If you can't sell, you need a retail location or a franchise that has a great marketing, like Budget Blinds and CertaPro. There are very name brands. They do a phenomenal job at advertising and getting the phone to ring. Many people, I'd say 90%, want the phone to ring or the customer to initiate the contact, and then they're okay. On the other hand, if you're great at sales and you're comfortable with that, you can lower your investment and you could own a service-based business because you're okay going to a networking group and standing up at B&I and talking, or going in front of executives and making a presentation. So we do a sales analysis of your sales skill or lack thereof, and we'll only match people with sales skills with sales-oriented franchises, or retail with people that couldn't sell their way out of a paper bag.
Well, and that's a good thing to know, too, that you don't have to be a salesman to do a franchise, because I think that that's another misconception that I hear people say, well, I don't want to sell anything, so I can't own a franchise. And what I hear you saying is, one, you get to be the manager. You don't have to be the operator. That's only one way to be a franchisor or franchisee. And then part of the thing is that you could have a franchise that even if you are the operator, it doesn't necessarily require you to sell the way that most people think about selling.
That is probably the biggest misnomer is, does it need driven? Is it want driven? Do you need to go outbound and network and market? Do you enjoy that? Or do you want people to come to you and say, I want it, I need it? And that's really an essential part about matching. And it really goes back to the ultimate question, Marie, that everybody should ask when they're looking at any business is, can I see myself doing this? The key is you don't ask that at the start of the process. You ask that after you're educated, you're informed, and you've really done your due diligence. Then you can stand back and say, okay, I know everything about it. Now can I see myself doing it? And a lot of the time the answer should be no. And if that's the case, then we've done our job. And that person says, you know what, I need to get a job. Owning a business or a franchise isn't for me. If they can answer yes, then they're ready to go forward.
Now, you do have people that are getting into franchises while they have their little job. So tell me a little bit about, do someone have to leave their job to own a franchise?
No, that's probably the new phenomena that I've seen is there's people that say, look, I like my job, but it's really not going to give me my path to retirement. Can I own a semi-absentee operation where I work at it 10 to 12 hours a week and have a full-time manager? And the answer is absolutely yes. And then we have people now that are doing something that's called a rebound or an encore career where they have retired and they go, you know what, I am bored out of my mind. I hate retirement. My spouse is going to divorce me. And they're looking for something that they can own without it consuming their life, where they can control their schedule and their quality of life factors.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's more challenging and it looks different, but that doesn't necessarily mean it can't be done.
No, typically the businesses are a little bit more under the radar. They're more of the demand-driven businesses, so that they're not glamorous and sexy, and you won't see them in the newspaper as this is the hot new thing, because when people need it, the service is more predictable. And for people that want the absentee and the encore career, typically they want to make a difference, and they're looking for something that's very predictable and low risk.
Yeah. Well, and it's just so fun that you can help somebody find that. So here I'm going to have you share with us how people can get in touch with you. But before you do that, just a little bit of information on how much someone can make. So we shared that the average investment is $151,000. Tell me a little bit about what someone's ROI looks like on that.
Well, this is an interesting question. We're regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, and typically when I'm working with a client, we're not allowed to make earnings claims. But since this is an interview, I'll tell you what I look for. If the net profit margin is 15% or lower, I wouldn't do it. It's too low unless you're dealing with something that does millions of dollars in revenue. 80% of the franchises that I work with have a 20% net profit margin. That's pretty consistent and considered very good. The ones that are service-based, where they don't have retail location, some of them will have 35 to 40. In fact, there's even one in our inventory that has a 70% net profit margin. So the real factor is if you can market, you can accelerate your timeline to break even. I would say it should be thought of as probably a 3 to 5 year plan. You ought to be making, break even in 12 to 24 months. And typically when people come to me, Marie, they're looking to do a 6-figure income. And so I will only show them businesses that can get them back to their income level, and that's commensurate to their investment.
Okay. So, Stephen, how can people connect with you if they're interested in learning more?
Well, you know what? I'm honored that you would even ask that, because I didn't want this to sound like a sales pitch, because what I do is a free service. My local number is 720-506-5096, and I have a website that's very educational. It's myfranchisespecialist.com.
myfranchisespecialist.com. Perfect. Well, you've been so good and giving us so much information, and I know it's going to be helpful to people out there who are thinking about this as an opportunity, whether it be for their next job or something on the side or their retirement gig. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Marie, for having me. It was really a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, and listeners, we'll be back in just a few minutes. We're going to continue kind of diving in a little bit deeper here on this topic, but we'll say goodbye to Stephen for now, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
The business community's first choice in Internet Talk Radio, Voice America Business Network.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation.
Is your business model robust enough? In today's ever-changing business environment, leaders are working to transform themselves and their business. Tune in to Business Reinvention with your host, Nancy Lynn, for insights on emerging trends and business innovations to help you stay ahead of the game. You'll learn from stories of inspiration, innovation, and forward thinking. Listen for Business Reinvention, live every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Channel.
Many industries have been revolutionized by technology in the last decade. Books, music, TV, communications, and now it's happening to our money and the way we pay. Tune in to Breaking Banks with Brett King for a look at how technology and customer behavior will bring about more changes in banking in the next 10 years than in the last 200 years. Listen every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific on Voice America Business Channel or on AM 1160 The Voice. You'll never look at your bank account the same again.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
You are tuned in to The Career Confidante with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@astrategicadvantage.com. Now, back to The Career Confidante.
Welcome back to the Career Confidante, and we have been talking today with Stephen Hogan from FranNet, and he shared his website. If you've been listening, you're probably already there, myfranchisespecialist.com, and just thinking about could franchising, becoming a franchisee, or maybe even becoming a franchisor if you've got a small business and are thinking about that. He helps people do that too. Is it a good fit for you? And so I love Stephen's approach because it really pays attention to that. Is it a good fit for you? And he didn't share this on the call, but he shared with me when we spoke that about 1 in 4 people, or maybe even fewer than that, are good candidates. He works with, at least 4 people before one of them is a good candidate for moving forward with the franchise. And part of that, as he shared, is because a franchise is a very specific type of business, right? You buy a structure. And so if you're like me and you're not the type of person that's going to follow that structure, it's probably not worth your investment for the structure. There might be a different reason to buy a business or something like that, but maybe not a franchise, because as he shared and as we all can kind of imagine, the value of a franchise is typically from the structure that you get of how to run the business, how to make it work, how to do the marketing. All of those structured pieces that come with it make it an ideal opportunity for, as he said, someone who's open to some risk, although he's got opportunities that have varying risk levels, and franchises can offer varying risk levels, but someone also who can execute and work the structure versus trying to innovate that structure. So before you're going to go into a franchise, just like any other career change, right, it's going to take some time to figure out what you're really looking for, what your strengths are, how it's going to fit with your life. Is it the right move for you? And, I shared this kind of briefly when Stephen was on the call, but part of what I've seen not work for especially individuals who are unemployed is to move into this type of opportunity, just like any opportunity, without really investigating. So I think the financial services people, unfortunately, were the worst offenders of recruiting people to their business. And, if someone ever says to you, well, anybody can do this, anybody can be successful at this, that is your cue to turn and run. That is just not true, right? That's not true with any type of job. If I told you that anybody could be successful as a motivational speaker, yeah, maybe that is true in an esoteric kind of sense, that anybody could learn to do that, but by the time they got good at it, they probably wouldn't have any audiences to watch them anymore, and they would have not been making any money, right? There's something about success that equals you having some natural talent, the motivation, drive, or as Stephen called it, and I love it, conviction. There's both of those. Yes, some people are successful purely because they have that conviction and they bull their way in, but that doesn't work for most people. So if someone tells you that anybody can be successful doing X, Y, or Z, I would be very hesitant about that. There's skill sets involved, there's talents involved that are all going to play into maybe not whether or not you're successful, but whether or not you enjoy that success, right? Are you going to be able to enjoy yourself and therefore be successful long term? That's going to take a little bit more than just dedication, right? Dedication definitely being a big part, but we've got to have the right skills. And Stephen talked about that a little bit also, that the sales piece, right? And I talk to people all of the time who say, well, I could never do sales. Well, I can't do sales. And I think that when you hear yourself saying that, you really have to challenge that. Sales is done in a lot of different ways. Sales are made in a lot of different ways. There are a million different ways to be successful in sales. And so you may not be good at a job where you have to go and make cold calls and, like Stephen was talking about, doing the in-person sales calls and making presentations and all of those kinds of things may not be up your alley, but that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be good in an account manager role where you're really taking care of clients or you're educating people in that way that, yes, you're making a sale. There's a lot of different ways that sales happens, and when we cut that out as a category of a job or cut out becoming a franchisee because of that, we really eliminate some opportunities that maybe would be a good fit, especially for those people who love to help people, who love to talk to people, who love to educate. All of those people can make good salespeople if it's in the right kind of culture, if it's in the right kind of organization that does sales the way it fits with your personality, right? And I remember working with someone who was a counselor, and they came to me and they said, it's kind of weird, but I actually like doing sales because of X, Y, or Z. And I said, well, actually, that doesn't surprise me that much, right? And when you're a good salesperson, if you're at the highest level of the sales process, you really are that trusted partner, trusted consultant. And that's a close second to being a counselor, a close on the same level, right? So how we think about sales might need to change. Another thing that Stephen talked about was this idea of getting to be the CEO of a franchise, right? And that may take a longer time to get there, or a higher level of investment up front, whichever way you go. But you could be over an area, a few different stores, and really have the opportunity to develop and train people and be in that leadership role all on your own, right? And I like Stephen call it, buying a job. Sure, go ahead, right? If this feels like a good way for you to use your skills, and honestly a good way to change how you think about earning money, it could be a great way to buy your own job. I think for a lot of people, it's just that idea of changing how we think about money. We think about money in terms of a paycheck. We think about money in terms of, if stability equals someone else giving me a paycheck every month or every 2 weeks. And this type of lifestyle requires you to think about that differently. Now, I personally would challenge that counting on someone else to give you a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month is stability, because they could come in tomorrow and tell you that your job is gone and you would have no other options that next day, right? You could apply for jobs, and maybe you've got a good network and you could move quickly. That's the best case scenario, and that's what I would consider stability if you are working as an employee. It's not really that you have a job, it's that you have all of the things in place that would help you get a new one tomorrow if yours was gone. That's stability there. But people who go into franchises or into a business like mine just see stability different, right? A franchisee might look at a P&L for a franchise and be able to see, as Stephen was talking about, that there's this 20% to 40% net profit, and that's stability, knowing that if I work the process and I get to 12 months from now, if I do all these things, because there's a system, there's a proven market, right? A franchise isn't going to let you buy into an area that doesn't have a market. All of those things are behind you. Then that stability is being able to know that 12 months from now, I will be able to make my own money. And yes, the market might fluctuate and all of those things might happen, just like someone who's employed could lose their job tomorrow. But I have all of these things in place that help me feel stable in what I'm doing. And as Stephen said, if that stability in terms of a paycheck and someone else being in charge of that is how you work best, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you're thinking about franchise, you might think about if you could consider stability differently. If stability could look different for you, then maybe that's something you could check into. I like the idea of thinking about all of the 4 things. Can you follow the system? Can you market? Or can you follow the system to market? Do you have the money for that? A lot of that's the money. And can you spend money even if you're not making it yet? Because that's where marketing gets most people, is that they don't want to spend money when they can't see its direct outcomes. And that's, again, not necessarily how marketing works all the time. And the sufficient capital fits right in with that. Do you have the sufficient capital to last you through until you're supposed to turn cash? And can you deal with that unknown? Can you change how stability looks in your head, or do you have some other way to feel like you're stable? It may work for you if a spouse has that more formal job, and you can be the one that's experimenting on the side. Or as Stephen talked about at the very end, this isn't something you have to quit your job to be able to do. There are options that you can take advantage of even if you are working. So we're going to come back here in just a few minutes, go through the key things to think about if you're thinking about going out on your own and being a franchisee. So we'll be back in just a few minutes.
The business community's first choice in Internet Talk Radio. Voice America Business Network.
You know that the career landscape has changed and that you need to be proactive about managing your career. You can have the foresight, skills, and confidence you need to take charge of your career and seize opportunities. A strategic advantage and career expert, Marie Zimenoff has helped thousands of leaders like you get focused, get found, and get hired. Visit getcareersmart.com to find out more. That's getcareersmart.com or call 800-521-2080 to schedule your complimentary consultation. What does a visual workplace mean to you? How does it contribute to operational excellence? And what steps do you take to put it powerfully in place? Listen to The Visual Workplace, work that makes sense, to find out. Each week, Dr. Gwendolyn Galsworth, visual workplace expert and award-winning author, shares tools and strategies to help you make the workplace speak at a glance without saying a word. Learn to work safer, faster, better, and at far less cost no matter what business you're in. Tune in to The Visual Workplace every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on Voice America Business.
Now you don't have to stay linked to your desktop or laptop. Take Voice America on the go and listen anywhere. Get our mobile app for iPhone, BlackBerry, or Android at the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market.
You are tuned in to The Career Confidante with Marie Zimenoff. If you have a question or comment for Marie or her guest today, please call 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You may also send an email to marie@astrategicadvantage.com. Now, back to The Career Confidante.
Welcome back to The Career Confidante, and today we've been talking about franchising and what it might look like, or how you might decide if becoming a franchisee would be a good fit for you. So Stephen Hogan was with us, and he was from myfranchisespecialist.com. And again, we've been talking about his process and just the thought of there's really some exploration that comes before the horse here, right? The cart before the horse doesn't work. He was talking about horses that pull the cart, and being able to understand what our personality is before we jump into any kind of investment here. So we talked a little bit about the things that make you successful. We've talked about some of the things to watch out for. And part of, again, why I loved his process is because it did help you explore what might be a good fit for you, and really thinking about your risk tolerance, your ability to fit within some structures, all of those things. So I wanted to share some of the data with you around franchisees and what they look like. So this is some national data. 28% of franchises are owned by women, 71% owned by men. So my guess would be that women number has been growing and definitely more acceptable these days, and hopefully more easily for women to get financing. I think that is still a challenge, unfortunately, especially in the service-based businesses, for women to get financing for those types of purchases. So if you're out there, female, thinking about buying a franchise, I'd be aware of that, your franchise purchase and financing for part of that. Kind of historically, some issues with women getting financing for service-based business. And median age of franchise owner is 45 to 55, probably not that surprising. But if you're thinking, that's for a young person, or maybe even that's for a retiree, that data would kind of speak against both of those things. It happens in those 45 to 55 year range. And then 12% are younger than 34. So go us, younger than 34 business owners. But if you're out there and that young and thinking about it, all you got to have is the capital, right? More than half of them have a bachelor's degree or some advanced degree, so obviously not a requirement. Again, for some of you who might be out there that don't have that degree, and as Stephen said, have the opportunity to buy yourself that leadership position, might be a fun way to do it. And what kind of fun? 12% of franchise owners are veterans. I'm sure he would love to help more veterans fit into that category. So Stephen talked a little bit about this, and in terms of income, the average pre-tax income is 50 to 75, and 11% earn upwards of 150,000. Obviously, that's going to depend on what type of franchise you buy into. All those things as you're looking at the financials for that franchise that you're purchasing, but to know that 11% end up in that multi-six-figure kind of range. Interesting to me that California and Texas have the largest number of franchises, probably just because they're the biggest states, and Arkansas and Vermont having the least. So if you're in Arkansas and Vermont, there might be opportunity for you abounding there in your backyard. Average ownership of a franchise tenure, so how long someone owns a franchise, is typically between 1 to 5 years. So that's interesting to think that people are selling them, maybe moving into a different kinds of franchise. Most of the people I know that in that area tend to become serial franchises. Serial franchisees, is that the right word? Moving from one to the other, growing. And as I said, with my contact here who owns all the Domino's, he is more that expanding, right? Continuing to purchase other stores in the area. Most popular industry sectors, so as Stephen was talking about, there's different industries that you can go into: quick service, lodging, business related, least popular being video, security related, and party related. So if you're thinking everybody who runs a franchise is a Mary Kay consultant, this would say probably not, since that's in the least popular category. Interesting, the number here quite different than what Stephen shared, so it may have to deal with the type of franchises that he helps people choose, but the national average for investment is $520,000. So again, maybe working with a consultant helps to find some of those franchises that are a little bit lower on the investment realm. So last few minutes here, just before we close, thinking about what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. And this is coming from the Huffington Post. And just thinking about, and this is the eight things entrepreneurial people do differently. So Stephen and I talked about some of these, right? Brave enough to commit to their dreams. I liked his word of conviction, right? Commitment, really believing that whatever it is you sign into is going to make it happen, whether that's a passion for donuts or a conviction for a basic service business that everybody needs, and I'm going to provide that basic service to my community and make a good living doing it. Which leads right into the second one, which is thinking of their customers more than themselves. So entrepreneurs who are out there, seeking the fame and all of those, usually don't become as successful as those who can really think about how they can offer the best thing to their customers. They never stop learning. They never give up, right? They're always out there pushing, finding things, and that leads right into they don't mind failing. This one says they love failing. I don't know if anybody loves failing, I guess, but they know that it's a part of trying new things. They find and fill a need in the world. So again, that person who knows there's a service required for the community to work may not be sexy, it may be dumpsters, but I can fill that need and provide a great service. They take old ideas and make them better, way better, so that can fit in for you as a franchisee or as a business owner, an entrepreneur. As a franchisee, as Stephen was talking about, we just want to make sure that we're focused on execution first and then on innovation, which would probably not make me a successful franchisee. Always something good to know about yourself. Above all, they act, right? Whether you're innovative and you're creating something from scratch or you're buying into a franchise, if you can, and people say this self-directed, self-motivated thing all the time, but very few people really are. And if you can be true with yourself and you really are that, then going into a franchise may be a great opportunity for you, whether you're unemployed or working, but knowing that you've got to be keeping another plate spinning for life to really be in control and for you to be in control of your career direction. So next week, very exciting, we're going to have Paula Zimenoff on talking about executive and board candidate bios. So if you're an executive or you're getting ready to apply to be on the board of directors of a profit or nonprofit organization, be a great opportunity to learn more from Paula right here. We'll be right here next week on the Career Confidante. And as always, I welcome your feedback, your questions at Marie, Marie, at astrategicadvantage.com. And we'll see you right back here next week on the Career Confidante.
Thank you for listening to The Career Confidante. Marie Zimenoff will return again with another terrific guest next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific on the Voice America Business Channel. Be sure to join us then.